Ex-Harvard president Claudine Gay apparently is going to maintain a position at Harvard as a professor, and according to the New York Post, may still make her near $900,000 salary. I believe they're reporting $879,000. So who's splitting hairs here? Anyway, the media is on fire about this. People are on fire about this all over Twitter. Last night, I was just looking at the comments, and it seems to be parsed into a couple different camps. One is she's a victim of racism and sexism within academia. The other is that she's only hung on so long because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she's a plagiarist who should have been fired a long time ago. Let me just read you what the New York Post is reporting, and then I'm going to tell you a quick story about something I learned as a reporter in TV news, which informs my opinion about this entire situation, not just the situation at Harvard, but just the reaction to it. I did not intend to become a Claudine Gay reporter, but I started this with Rob Muntz, who produced the documentary about Roland Fryer, who was basically suspended, canceled by the powers that be, including Claudine Gay at Harvard, despite his being a very successful professor, because essentially his work as an economist ran countercurrent to the narrative that is pushed at Harvard. He's a Black professor who really just didn't like a lot of the victim oppressor language and theory that was being pushed. Anyway, you can go watch that documentary. It's very good. Go to Good Kid Productions and watch the documentary about Roland Fryer. Anyway, back to Claudine Gay. They're reporting again that she will still likely earn nearly $900,000 a year, despite being forced to resign her position. That she'll be in some kind of new position, but she's going to stay as a political science professor. That she is expected to receive a salary comparable to what she received, if not higher, and unclear how much of her presidential salary of roughly $1 million Gay would be entitled to after only serving in the post for 6 months. It says that chairwoman of the GOP House Conference in New York, Harvard graduate, also a gay critic, ripped the decision, saying that the plagiarism charges are indelible stain that mars the school's legitimacy. She's not fit to be a faculty member, Stefanik told the Post. It's unacceptable when you have students at Harvard who would be expelled for plagiarism to allow a faculty member who has nearly 50 examples of plagiarism in their very slim body of academic work. It's absurd, and everybody knows it. Harvard knows it too. That's what she said. And they have an anonymous student saying that Gay is getting off easy because a student would get a real spanking over this. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then they just go into how we got here. When I was a reporter in TV news, there was a story I covered, probably it's been 5 years or so. I was an environmental reporter, and I got a tip about a wildlife rescue and rehabilitation center where the Department of Fish and Wildlife showed up and essentially killed a bunch of the animals that they decided were habituated to humans without any due process for the wildlife center. There were like a bunch of deer, I don't know, a dozen deer and an elk. And they came and, on a tip, basically, or they were inspecting and found that the deer and elk would like come up to you and eat out of your hand or something. They determined that they were just too habituated to be returned to the wild. And since this was not a zoo, this was a wildlife center, they had to release these animals back to the wild. So therefore, they couldn't do that because they were habituated. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife put them down. They didn't just shoot them so somebody could eat them. They just, humanely euthanized them and totally wasted all the meat. But that's a separate story for another day. So I was called and I came out and did this story and I put it on television, and there was this mass upheaval over this. People were mad. The pro animal people were mad. Like, I don't want to say pro animal, that's wrong. The people who don't like animal abuse or killing animals, they were upset because these animals were euthanized. The hunters were upset because nobody got to eat the meat. The due process property rights people are upset because the state never gave this wildlife rehab a chance to discuss with the wildlife commissioners whether this was the right thing to do, whether their animals were in fact habituated. Maybe it was something that just happened the day that the wildlife officers came and there was just no due process. So that just meant that the Fish and Wildlife can just show up on your property and kill your animals. So there were not a lot of happy people in this situation. Well, because they weren't able to kill all the animals the first time, and then there was this public outcry after my story, they decided they weren't going to kill the rest of the animals and that they were fine to live there. They totally changed course, even though they said to me at the beginning that they just had to. They had no choice. They had no choice but to kill these animals because this is their policy. But their policy was really only as solid as the upheaval of the loudest and angriest voices, the people who were putting the most pressure on them. And it made me realize that in this particular case, and I would say it extends to others, and I think it connects to this case too, that that either Harvard should have had the balls. I'm just going to say it. Either Harvard should have had the balls to keep her as president if they feel like she's good enough to be a near $1 million professor and stay and indoctrinate students. They should have had the balls to keep her as a professor, or they should have gotten rid of her. But to me, this whole thing of, we're going to just demote her to a very expensive professor and she's still going to have a lot of power just like she did before. She was a dean, but a professor. She wasn't president. She still wielded a lot of power at the university before she was president, like I just mentioned with Roland Fryer. So I think personally in this case, like, to go back to the Fish and Wildlife, all right, to me, it was like the state should have had the balls to stick with what their policy was because they really believed that science determined their policy and they had to stick by the science. Or, admit that they just changed their minds about their science depending on whoever makes them the most uncomfortable, because that was what I saw. Now, listen, I didn't want the rest of those animals to be killed. I thought what they did was kind of ridiculous. That wasn't my role as a reporter, but personally, I thought what they did was a little bit ridiculous. I thought it was extra ridiculous when it turns out that a journalist like me can come and do one story and then all of a sudden all the science goes flying out the window. You may say there's a third possible option, which is they learned their lesson. They learned their lesson. They realize, oh, I guess, somebody presented us new science and the new science has determined for us in 2 days or less that we did the wrong thing. And actually science now says that we should leave the deer alone. I think they just buckled to public pressure. And though I actually agreed with, I was happy personally about the decision to leave the wildlife rehab alone. I was very displeased with learning that that's how government operates. And that was a real learning lesson for me to see that, like, I had that kind of power as a reporter. I didn't even like that. Some people go in and say, wow, look at me. I'm awesome. I swayed the course of history. But like, I actually was not happy to learn that I could go in, do a story, a bunch of people could complain, and then all of a sudden, state policy just changes. Not with a congressional hearing, not with lawmakers, not with due process. Just because there were enough angry people, the state changes mind. How you can support my work and not end up on some kind of extremist list, but still be an extremist, go check out AllisonWinePromo.com. Get yourself some amazing Malbecs from Argentina. They are my favorite wines, and they're clean wines. They're from small family farms, hand-picked grapes, natural fermentation, zero filtration, all the good stuff. One vineyard's over 200 years old, and they're from 6,000 to 9,000 feet. They're very unique wines. You cannot get them at the grocery store. This company has been so good to me. If you're a wine drinker, please go support them. It really does help. If you are looking for some vitamin D, you can go to greenpasture.org. This is also for omegas, DHA, all that good stuff. Okay. Greenpasture.org. Use the promo code Allison10. And that's your promo code at checkout. Or you can just use the affiliate link in the description and pinned comments, and you don't have to use a promo code. Just use the affiliate link. I take the fermented cod liver oil, concentrated butter oil. I like the cinnamon tingle flavor, and I have had extremely good results with teeth health. Like if you get chronic cavities or gum disease, this is great for that. great for your brain. It's just a great food-based product. It's not a supplement, and it's fermented, so it's really easily digestible and accessible for your nutrition. So consider going to greenpasture.org, and then finally go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison if you're a coffee drinker. Get some USDA certified organic roast. We got light roast, we got dark roast, we got sampler packets, we even have tea. There's a whole bunch here. It's great for free speech because they are also a free speech company, and they have been also very good to me. I really appreciate not just the product because I drink it myself. I have the espresso, which turns out is sold out right now. I probably drank too much of it. I drink it with my raw milk latte in the morning, add a little bit of vanilla and almond extract and cocoa, raw cocoa. It's very good. In this particular case, my guess is that Claudine Gay was going to sue the pants off of Harvard, and they couldn't totally fire her because they knew that lawsuit was coming. Also, my husband brought up a really good point that if they fired her for plagiarism, there are probably a lot of people in power at Harvard that would have to go. And so they're like, well, we can't, she could probably bring up case of this and this and this against us because she probably has dirt on us. And so then we're all going to have to go because we can't hold her to the same standards that we don't follow, or different standards, I guess, that we agree to. We're all a bunch of lazy academics and or whatever, plagiarists, whatever you want to call it, whatever is happening at Harvard, then they can't go too. So they just demote her. I personally think, like I said, Harvard, if it wants to really like put this professor, this president, former president, now professor, if in fact this is what's going on, in a position of influence, then they should have left her as president. I think this is a no balls move. I'm not saying I'm a fan of Claudine Gay, or that I'm not a fan of Claudine Gay. I'm looking at this like truly from an objective perspective, not even going into say she was accused of, I don't even know, another rule at Harvard. I'm trying to think of what rules Harvard has, say Harvard had a rule of like saggy pants. Okay. You couldn't wear saggy pants to school. And Claudine Gay's like, I'm going to wear saggy pants. I don't care. And the reason I bring this up is because Florida had these rules about saggy pants, and you could not break the saggy pants rule. But I had a reporter friend of mine. It was really funny. A kid actually said that his saggy pants saved his life because a gator bit his butt and was unable to kill him because of his saggy pants. All right. And that guy got to break the rules, I think, afterwards because he had the gator excuse. All right. So I just thought of that because that was like a thing in Florida. All right. You couldn't wear saggy pants to school. I live in Florida now. When I was growing up. All right. So say that's a thing. And Harvard has a rule and everybody has to follow it. And, she doesn't. Well, okay. Either, give her the punishment that everybody should get, or keep her as president. And I just think the fact that they just demoted her is like, what is that? I mean, it's just, the whole thing just seems like complete theater, all of it is like total theater. And Harvard either, I don't know, this was all like in the works to begin with. And we were just like led to believe there was actually something organic happening in the background with this whole thing. I don't know what the other option is, other than I'll just say one more time that if she's bad enough to demote, okay, then because you're saying we're going to demote her because we believe these charges are credible, we believe these accusations are credible, because otherwise, why not leave her president? Leave her president of the school. If you don't think she did anything bad, then leave her president. Why are you demoting her? But if you're demoting her, in which case you're saying there's a reason she shouldn't be president, then why is she staying at the school? So, it's like, it just reminded me of the Fish and Wildlife. It was like, did you just do this because, there's enough powerful people that are yelling at you? Like, what do you exactly stand for? And when are the rules enforced and when not. And it just brings me to like a bigger issue, generally speaking, which is one reason I'm very pro free speech, anti-censorship, is because I have seen firsthand how the most powerful voices dictate history and who can speak and who can't speak, or who gets to keep their job and who doesn't get to keep their job, and how all these negotiations are wielded behind closed doors and we don't know how they work, and this person's connected to that person connected to this person. You know, I don't want I see how those rules are basically only as good as the loudest voice, or as bad as weak as the loudest voice. And so I just think any of those restrictions on speech, for instance, are never they're never going to benefit anybody but those people. Going to go take some questions over on locals. Let me just pull this up here, okay? Going to pull some questions up and talk to you guys. We'll do the after party over there. So thanks everybody who supports on locals. If you go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com, you could be on my editorial board for $5 a month. It's a great way to support my work. I couldn't do it without the editorial board. So thank you guys to those who are on. I will be on there in a minute. I do have a P.O. box now. If you are not interested in using a credit card online, you don't want the banks to chase you, or you don't have a bank because you were debanked. You know, you're one of those people. You might not have any money to support me, but that's totally fine. You can send me a letter, send me your pocket lint, send me some loose change, send me a lottery ticket, send me anything that's not edible, because I don't want to eat stuff that people send me, because I don't trust that you're not trying to kill me. Also, no creepy letters, weird photos, that kind of thing. But I'd love to hear about your family. I love getting letters. It's been really great to have this P.O. Box. P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida, 34432. Okay? So thanks, everybody who's watching everywhere else. We're going to be on locals exclusively now. I will see you next time.